Imagine the scene. A palace chamber, heavy with the scent of old wood and beeswax. Sunlight streams through tall, arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny diamonds. In a gilded crib, a newborn lies swaddled in the finest silks. This is a royal child, a new link in a chain of power stretching back centuries, a symbol of divine favor and dynastic strength. Their birth is announced with cannon fire and pealing bells. But what if this child, this supposed vessel of perfect lineage, is born different? What if they carry within their very cells a truth that shatters the carefully constructed myth of royal perfection? What happens when the trumpets fall silent, and the doors to the nursery are quietly closed, never to be fully opened to the world again? This isn't a fairy tale. For centuries, behind the velvet curtains and golden walls of Europe's most prestigious palaces, a dark secret has been carefully guarded. While royal families projected images of divine perfection to their subjects, they systematically erased their most vulnerable members from history itself. Children born with Down syndrome were not merely hidden. They were declared dead while still breathing, locked away in desolate institutions, and forgotten by the very families who should have protected them. This is the story of the hidden royals, the children whose existence threatened the very foundation of monarchy, and whose lives were sacrificed for the sake of a crown. For over 1,000 years, European royalty maintained their power through carefully constructed myths of superiority and divine bloodlines. They were not merely rulers. They were seen as a different class of human, chosen by God, their physical forms a testament to their flawless lineage. The birth of an heir was a state event, a promise of continuity and stability. But within this rigid system, there was no room for imperfection. The birth of a child with a visible disability, such as the distinct facial features associated with Down syndrome, was more than a personal tragedy. It was a dynastic crisis. It threatened to shatter the illusion of divine right. How could a line be divinely blessed if it produced a child deemed flawed by the standards of the time? This fear, rooted in a mixture of medieval superstition and later, the cold pseudoscience of eugenics, led to a brutal and systematic practice, the concealment and erasure of these children. Their stories span centuries and continents, from medieval castles to 20th century institutions. They reveal a pattern of systematic abuse that reached its most refined cruelty in modern times, when medical knowledge should have brought understanding, but instead provided new methods of concealment. These are not tales of ancient barbarism, but of calculated decisions made by educated, powerful people who chose convenience over humanity. To understand their fate, we must first understand the world that condemned them to the shadows. In the medieval and Renaissance periods, the understanding of congenital conditions was non-existent. A child born with the features of what we now know as Down syndrome was often viewed through the terrifying lens of superstition. They were seen as changelings, fairy or demonic infants swapped at birth with the true human child. Others interpreted their birth as a sign of God's wrath, a divine punishment for the sins of the parents or the kingdom itself. For a royal family, this was catastrophic. A changeling in the royal nursery was a sign that the entire dynasty had lost divine favor. This belief was so pervasive that many such infants simply disappeared. Historical records are sparse, as such matters were handled with the utmost secrecy. A royal infant might be recorded as having died shortly after birth from a sudden illness, a convenient fiction that preserved the family's honor. In reality, these children were often given to monasteries or convents. The Catholic Church, a central power in medieval Europe, provided a convenient and seemingly merciful solution. Within the high walls of a secluded religious house, the child could be raised away from public view, their existence a secret known only to a select few. It was a kinder fate than abandonment, but it was a life sentence of isolation. They were erased from the line of succession, their portraits never painted, their names omitted from family trees. They existed as living ghosts, their royal blood a secret shame rather than a birthright. The pressure of dynastic politics only intensified this cruelty. Royal marriages were not about love. They were strategic alliances that sealed treaties and secured borders. A royal family's most valuable assets were their healthy, marriageable children. A child with a visible disability was seen as a genetic taint, a blemish on the family stock that could jeopardize crucial marriage negotiations with other European powers. The presence of such a child could be interpreted as a sign of weakness in the bloodline, making all the children of that family less desirable partners. To secure the future of their other children and the stability of their reign, monarchs and their advisors made the cold, pragmatic choice to make the problem disappear. The child's individual life was sacrificed for the greater good of the dynasty. As Europe moved into the Age of Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, superstition began to give way to science. But for disabled children, this new era brought a more insidious form of prejudice. The 19th century saw the birth of eugenics, a pseudoscientific movement that advocated for improving the human race through selective breeding. Pioneered by figures like Sir Francis Galton, a cousin of Charles Darwin, eugenics classified human beings based on perceived genetic fitness. Those with disabilities, mental illness, or even just those from lower social classes were deemed unfit and a threat to the genetic purity of the nation. For the aristocracy and royal families, who had long prided themselves on their superior bloodlines, eugenics provided a modern, scientific-sounding justification for their ancient prejudices. Now, a child with Down syndrome was no longer a changeling or a divine punishment. They were a genetic defective, a biological liability. This shift in thinking coincided with the rise of a new solution for the unwanted: the asylum. Grand, imposing institutions like the Royal Ulswood Asylum for Idiots, founded in 1847, were built across Europe. While often presented to the public as benevolent centers of care and education, many were little more than warehouses for society's discarded people. For royal families, these institutions were the perfect solution. They were secular, medically sanctioned, and, most importantly, discreet. A disabled royal child could be quietly committed, their name changed, and their connection to the family severed. The family could then publicly claim the child had died, a lie that could now be backed up with falsified death certificates and altered entries in official records like Burke's Peerage or the Almanac de Gotha. The rise of mass media, newspapers, and photography made this secrecy all the more urgent. The private lives of royals were becoming public consumption. A photograph of a disabled royal child could cause a national scandal, undermining public confidence in the monarchy. The risk was too great. And so, in an age that celebrated scientific progress and human reason, the practice of erasing disabled children from the royal narrative was not abandoned, but perfected. It became more systematic, more clinical, and arguably even more cruel. The story of Princess Alexandrine of Prussia is a poignant example of this new, enlightened cruelty. Born in 1915, she was the youngest child of Crown Prince Wilhelm, the last heir to the German and Prussian thrones, and Duchess Cecily of Mecklenburg-Schwerin. From birth, it was clear that Alexandrine had Down syndrome. Her family, unlike some, did not abandon her entirely. Her mother, Crown Princess Cecily, was reportedly devoted to her and ensured she received care within the family's various residences. However, this care was administered under a strict veil of secrecy. Alexandrine was the hidden princess. While her brothers were paraded in public as symbols of the Hohenzollern dynasty's future, Alexandrine was kept carefully out of sight. She never attended the grand state functions, her name was rarely mentioned in official communications, and she was conspicuously absent from family photographs released to the press. The German public was largely unaware of her existence. She was a ghost in her own palaces, loved by her immediate family but erased from the public record. Her life was a contradiction. She was surrounded by the immense wealth and privilege of one of Europe's most powerful royal houses. Yet she was denied the basic human dignity of public acknowledgement. Alexandrine lived a long but profoundly isolated life. She briefly attended a school for children with special needs but spent the vast majority of her years in seclusion in a villa near Lake Starnberg in Bavaria, cared for by nurses. She outlived both of her parents and many of her siblings, finally passing away in 1980 at the age of 65. Her death, like her life, was a quiet affair, a final footnote to a story that was never meant to be read by the public. Her fate illustrates the heartbreaking paradox of the era. A family could love their child deeply, yet still feel compelled by the pressures of their station to deny that child's very existence to the world. Perhaps no case illustrates the cold, systematic nature of this royal practice more shockingly than that of Nerissa and Katherine Bowes-Lyon, first cousins to Queen Elizabeth II. Their story wasn't uncovered until the 1980s, revealing a secret that reached into the heart of the modern British monarchy. Nerissa, born 1919, and Katherine, born 1926, were the daughters of John Bowes-Lyon, the brother of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. This made them the Queen's direct first cousins. Both girls were born with severe developmental disabilities. For a family that had just ascended to the throne in 1936, and was positioning itself as the moral bedrock of the nation during World War II, the existence of two severely disabled members in its immediate circle was deemed an unacceptable complication. In 1941, at the ages of 22 and 15, Nerissa and Katherine were secretly admitted to the Royal Ulswood Hospital for mental defectives in Surrey. They were placed there by their mother, Fenella, with the full knowledge of the Bowes-Lyon family. From that day forward, they were effectively erased. The deception was chillingly thorough. In 1963, the family reported to Burke's Peerage, the authoritative guide to the British aristocracy, that both Nerissa and Katherine were dead. This was a deliberate lie. Both women were still alive, living out their days in the underfunded and overcrowded state-run institution. They received little, if any, contact from the royal family. Staff at the hospital reported that the sisters never received a family visitor, a birthday card, or a Christmas present. They were utterly forgotten. The truth only came to light in 1987, a year after Nerissa's death. Journalists discovered that she had been buried in a pauper's grave, her final resting place marked only by a plastic name tag and a serial number. The subsequent media firestorm sent shockwaves through Britain. The public was horrified to learn that two cousins of their beloved queen had been abandoned and declared dead while languishing in a state institution. Buckingham Palace responded with a cold, brief statement, calling it a matter for the Bowes-Lyon family. The Queen Mother was reportedly aware of the situation but had believed her nieces to be dead for years, a claim that many found difficult to believe given the financial arrangements that would have been necessary to support their lifelong institutional care. Katherine Bowes-Lyon lived on at Ulswood and later another care home until her death in 2014 at the age of 87. In her final years after the story broke, she began to receive some attention, but for the majority of her life, she was a non-person. The story of Nerissa and Katherine is the most stark indictment of the royal obsession with image. It demonstrates that even in the 20th century, the instinct to hide away imperfect family members, to literally write them out of history, remained a powerful and cruel force. While the stories of Alexandrine, Nerissa, and Katherine paint a grim picture of rejection and concealment, there are exceptions that reveal a different, more compassionate, though still private, path. The most notable is the story of Anne de Gaulle, the youngest daughter of the legendary French leader and president, Charles de Gaulle. Born in 1928 and had Down syndrome, In an era when institutionalization was the standard advice from the medical community, Charles and his wife Yvonne made a radical decision. They would raise Anne at home as an integral part of their family. De Gaulle adored his daughter, whom he affectionately called "my joy." He refused to see her as a source of shame or a burden. Instead, he saw her as a gift who taught him about unconditional love and human vulnerability. Unlike the other royals, the de Gaulles did not hide Anne's existence. She was part of their family life. However, they were still fiercely protective of her and shielded her from the harsh glare of public life. Her disability was a private family matter, not a cause for public advocacy. De Gaulle was an intensely public figure, a symbol of French resilience and strength, and he understood the political risks. While he never abandoned his daughter, he did compartmentalize her life, separating the beloved child from the public persona of the great statesman, and died of pneumonia in 1948 at the age of 20, in her father's arms. Her death devastated him. He later used his personal funds to establish a foundation in her name, a home for young women with developmental disabilities. The foundation and de Gaulle became his most personal legacy. The story of Anne de Gaulle shows that love could, in some cases, triumph over the immense pressure of public life. Yet, even in this best-case scenario, the solution was still a form of concealment. Anne was loved and cherished, but her life was lived within the protective, private sphere of her family, a world away from the public stage on which her father stood. The stories of these hidden royal children are more than just historical tragedies. They are a powerful indictment of a system that valued the illusion of perfection over the reality of human life. From the superstitious fears of the Middle Ages to the cold, calculated cruelty of the eugenics era, the goal was always the same: to erase any evidence that threatened the myth of a flawless, divinely ordained bloodline. The institutions that housed them, from monasteries to asylums, became accomplices in this great deception, providing a convenient and discreet means of making people disappear. Families, bound by tradition and terrified of public shame, willingly participated, sacrificing their own children for the sake of reputation and power. The result was generations of forgotten princes and princesses, living and dying in anonymity, their royal heritage a secret they may never have even known. Today, the world has changed. The disability rights movement has fought to bring these issues out of the shadows. The revelations about figures like the Bowes-Lyon sisters have forced a public reckoning with this dark history. In response, a memorial wall has been erected, and researchers and activists work to uncover more of these lost stories, determined that these forgotten children will finally be given the public acknowledgement they were denied in life. Their legacy is a crucial reminder that true nobility lies not in the purity of a bloodline, but in the capacity for compassion. It challenges us to look at our own society and ask what prejudices we still hold, and who we might still be casting into the shadows. The memory of these hidden royals demands that we build a world where every child, regardless of their abilities, is not just loved in secret, but celebrated in the light. Thank you for watching Silent Atrocities. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more absolutely insane, untold historical content that your teachers were too polite to mention, hit that subscribe button right now, like, share, and comment below. What other untold historical story would you like me to reveal? See you in the next one.